Down, but not out, Uncle Warren and Aunt Betty returned to the States and enrolled at the University of Missouri in Columbia. Betty resumed her work in music education, and Warren studied law. While attending school, Uncle Warren needed to find work to support his growing family. Eventually, a seat opened in the Missouri House of Representatives, and intrigued by the opportunity to represent his hometown, he ran on the Democratic ticket and won. At that time, he was the youngest representative ever to serve from Mississippi County, but the position proved to bring an exhausting schedule. He would go to Jefferson City for work in the House during the day, study all night at his home in Columbia, and return to Jeff City for work the next day. One term, many sleepless nights, and another daughter later named Lee, Uncle Warren and Aunt Betty graduated from the University of Missouri at the same time. His first term in the House was a success, and the Kansas City Star newspaper named him the outstanding freshman legislator. Realizing politics was his future, and an alternative way to serve his country, Uncle Warren returned home to Mississippi County and set up a part-time law office in East Prairie. From there, he commuted during the week to Jeff City to fulfill his office in the House.
I think he figured out early on that he wanted to be higher up, and he was a very effective legislator. He knew where the bills are. He understood the legislation.
In his third term, after much success, Uncle Warren ran for House Majority Leader. His age and inexperience was a downfall, though, and he was defeated by veteran legislators. A likable guy, Warren was not discouraged, and instead focused on making friends. So many friends, in fact, that in his very next term he was asked to take the role, which he did for the next 2 terms.
It was when he became floor leader that I saw great maturity in him in politics and in legislation and in leadership. He was in a position to help a lot of people in a lot of areas. And I think that's when, in my mind, he really politically matured to become recognizable as a potential statewide candidate.
10 years after first taking office, Uncle Warren was known for being fair, honest, and true to his word. His accomplishments in education and mental health included the introduction of 52 bills and the guidance of 241 through the General Assembly. However, during his 5th term, an opportunity arose for Uncle Warren to grow even further in his political career. The Missouri Secretary of State was stepping down due to health problems, and Uncle Warren quickly announced his intention to run for the office. A well-known newspaper editor was his only competition, but it automatically pitted almost 400 newspapers against him. With only $12,000 in campaign funds, Uncle Warren knew the campaign would be tough.
The Secretary of State's office, it is a stepping stone to other political offices. You can get a lot of coverage there, and you don't do anything that make people hate you.
With very little money, Uncle Warren turned to good, old-fashioned, person-to-person campaigning. For almost 2 years, he not only campaigned among his many friends in the House, but also traveled the state, talking directly to the people to recruit their votes and support.
He went on the road at night, to different places, to civic clubs. That was his strategy, because we weren't going to have any money for the Secretary of State's race. But he knew he had to have some statewide recognition.
His person-to-person strategy worked, and in 1960, Warren was named Missouri's Secretary of State. He moved his family, which now included a 3rd daughter, Julie, to Jefferson City, but the campaign wasn't over.
He knew from the moment he was sworn in as Secretary of State he would be announcing for governor. That's what he wanted to do. That's what his goal.
I was chief of the Globe Democrat, St. Louis Globe Democrat Jefferson City Bureau. I handled all state politics and state issues at that time. And as Secretary of State, I met this young, and I guess he was 30, 31 years old man from southeast Missouri with what we used to kid back in those days was a squeaky voice. Then I found out he moved to about 3-4 blocks from me in Jefferson City.
This is 606 Boonville Road, Jefferson City, Missouri, home of Secretary of State Warren E. Hearnes, Democratic candidate for governor. This evening, we've been invited to visit with Mr. Hearnes, his wife, and their 3 daughters. I believe they're waiting for us. Won't you join me?
We had in Jefferson City in those days what we called the establishment. And the establishment consisted mainly of the Central Missouri Trust Company, the bank on the corner. The bank on the corner was run by Howard Cook. The Cook family liked to have their banking interest strayed into state politics, meaning that they got a lot of the state funds which are deposited that they could use to make money on. And in doing so, they took an active part in determining who the state treasurer and who the governor was. So if you were a friend of the, quote, establishment, you had sort of had a head start. And the friend in those days was Hillary Bush.
I guess you would call him a kingmaker in a way. You needed the endorsement of the Central Trust Bank if you were going to run for any kind of a statewide office in Missouri. That was kind of the understanding of the way things were.
Normally the bank used to say, well, here's who we're taking, and he didn't have any serious opposition. And I kind of admired Hearnes back in those years. He was a young scrapper and was coming along and decided that he was going to take on the establishment.
I think they probably told Warren, you know, wait your turn. There's other people coming along before you. Well, he didn't buy that, you know. He had his goals and he set out to achieve them.
You know, timing is everything. And he said, this is the right time. Because he said, I will tell you something. After I'm a governor, if I'm elected, which he always said, if I'm elected, you'll have to have so much money to run that it'll be unreal. He was exactly right.
Your vote for me Tuesday, August the 4th will put tonight's ideas plus many, many more into full and effective swing. There is so much to be done in and for Missouri. And as your governor, I know that I can do it.